Hello, ladies and gentlemen of Ballet International. I am presenting you today a special guest. And she is the ex-senior ballet mistress of the PACT Ballet Company that was in South Africa, in Johannesburg and Pretoria. When I first met Nicola Middlemist, she was dancing. Then she has been promoted to senior ballet mistress, and then she became also repetitor. Now, it is an honor for us to have Nicola Middlemist online, and she accepted to participate to this interview. And after struggling a little bit on technical problems with Zoom, we finally made it to be online. But I think it's going to be a beautiful interview that I wish that everyone of PACT Ballet and also the people who are overseas will listen to her words. So, good morning, Nikki. Everybody knows you as a Nikki Middlemist.
Yeah, no, that's correct. My stage name was Nicola Middlemist, but everyone knows me as Nikki.
Yeah.
Obviously, my married name is too.
Yes, it's like a nickname. So, could you please describe how did you start ballet?
Right. Well, I think I'll start with saying that I've gathered over the years that many performers were actually. Jean-Pierre, we're going to have to stop a second. Barry, you are clattering around in circles. Oh my God!
Don't worry for that. Don't worry.
Are you gonna cut it out? Do you want to start again?
No, don't worry. Maybe I will leave it because it's more beautiful, you know, to be natural. Don't worry, it happens to everyone. So it's like a ballet performance. It happens what it happens. So
okay, sorry. Yeah, as I say, I think that most performers were shy as children. A lot of people that I've met, and I was exceptionally shy. I was the youngest of 3 children. My sister was very gregarious. My brother was very sporty, and there was nothing really much for me. I was brought up in the northeast of England, and there wasn't a lot that one could do. And my mother took me to a local ballet school's concert. And from then on, I was waltzing around the house, trying to be a fairy and whatever, for about 3 weeks. And then eventually she was wanting to find something that I could do, not try and copy my siblings.
yes.
So they took me to dancing classes, and from then on, I just was smitten. I absolutely loved it. I had a very, very lovely teacher who had just qualified in London. Those days, you had to go all the way to London to study the RAD to become a teacher. And so she was very new, and I loved her to bits. And then when she stopped teaching, I had another teacher, Lisette Byrne, who was much older, much more daunting, but however, took me along that path. Yeah. And it just happened, you know, you do your exams and you do well in your exam. And then I got a scholarship from the Royal Academy for 4 years. Once I reached elementary, they would see when they were touring examiners talent or potential talent.
Yes.
And so we would go, that was for a year, and you had to be retested. And then we would go to Edinburgh for our retesting because we were the northern counties, the north part of England. And so that was, it just, it just happened. It was one step at a time. And then I auditioned for the Royal Ballet School, and I had 2 auditions. We had to travel to London for that. And I got in happily into the Royal Ballet School.
Yes. So then, at what age did you travel from England to South Africa? And how did you, when did you start listening about South Africa, PACT Ballet, and how did you move from England to South Africa? What made you move then?
Okay, well, I was just over 15 and a half when I went to the Royal Ballet School,
Yeah.
which was very, very young.
Yeah.
And I found it very difficult to settle in the beginning, but there were wonderful other dancers older than me in the house where I lived.
Yes.
And they were very kind and helpful, and 2 of them were South Africans. And the lass who I made really good friends with as well was a Rhodesian.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Life takes you in a funny direction. And so during that time, while I was at the Royal Ballet School, in my first year, my father was transferred to South Africa.
Yes.
To open a factory on behalf of his company. And then my mother followed, and my siblings were married or, working.
Yeah.
And so I came here for a holiday, but the principal at the Royal Ballet School, she said to me, there's a very good ballet company in Johannesburg. It's called PACT Ballet. Write to them and send photographs. And then when you go, ask them if you can have an audition. So when you go, audition. If you don't get in, come back. And my plan then was to spend another year at the Royal Ballet School, but then to go to Germany, as a lot of girls did. Yeah. Because those days, just about every town, every city had a ballet company or an opera ballet company. Mm-hmm. So that's where quite a lot of people went from the Royal Ballet School if they didn't get into a British company. Yeah. So I did what I was advised to do, but by the time I got here, the company were on tour with a full-length Cinderella. Yes. And Faith de Villiers said go to this lady for classes, which was Marjorie Sturman, while we were away, while the company were away, so I could still do classes. And then when they came back, she saw me in class and I got a job. How I got a job, I don't know. Because even though I'd had the grounding of the Royal Ballet School, and, which I loved, I realized very quickly I knew nothing. Absolutely nothing.
You were not familiar with anything at
all? No. I asked Faith de Villiers, the artistic director who gave me a job, I asked her, what made you employ me? I mean, apart from being able to dance, but I mean, I was as green as a cabbage. And she just laughed and she just said, no, I could see that you were fit in the company. But we did laugh about it many years later, about what made you actually employ this little girl, so shy. And she did refer to my shyness a couple of times years later. Yeah. When I was teaching in the company, she had said, I'm so proud of what you've done because you were so shy. I would never have thought that you would have been in a position you're in now, not because of ability, but just how shy I was. Yeah. I am aware that there are many people who don't believe a word of my saying I was shy nowadays.
Well, you don't look shy to me now at all. So what impact did you have when you first joined PACT Ballet, not with the company, but if you could describe, because many people ask me, but who is Marjorie Sturman? Who was Marjorie Sturman? Could you describe Marjorie Sturman as a teacher, as a woman, as an artist, who she was and what type of classes she was giving and what type of teacher she was? Because she was a unique person of ballet.
Jean-Pierre, she was very, very different though. It was a bit of a culture shock for me because having been at the Royal Ballet School, and I had teachers like Julia Farron, who was a very gentle, very feminine lady. Had Barbara Fuster, who was very much got you going, and you know, she could identify your needs, and if you were lacking in petty battery, the class would be petty battery and all that. But the Royal Ballet School was a very nurturing environment.
Yes.
And the teachers were incredible.
Yes.
And then I came and I met Marjorie Sturman, and she was very, very different. To a 17-year-old, she was tough and hard, and her style of class was a little bit of a culture shock to me. Very hard and very, very difficult. It wasn't flowing. It was exercise, exercise, exercise. But of course, in that, there was a huge amount of knowledge. And after a few classes, then I got used to her style. But at the beginning, and she used to wear a flat, a little circle of velvet plaited headdress, if you like, in different colors, which intrigued me. Again, at 17, it was something I hadn't experienced. And of course, she trained many, many dancers in the company. She knew what she was doing. She was a stalwart. Without her and others and Faith, I don't think they would have been a ballet company. She trained many dancers, which in the 40s and 50s and going into the 60s fed the Royal Ballet companies, very definitely. So as a teacher, to my knowledge, not that I was trained by her, so I'm only saying, you know, my personal experience of a few classes and then her presence around the balletic sphere. She was highly, highly respected. Sorry.
No, don't worry.
Yes, she knew what she was doing. But for me, my first impression, it was a bit of a culture shock. But one matures and you realize that different teachers have something different to offer from which you can benefit. You put it all together. And that's how it is.
I remember when I first joined PACT Ballet, I only made 3 or 4 classes with Marjorie Sturman because she was coming at the Queen's Hall giving class. And I remember that she used to give class, she had a wooden stick and she was correcting, touching your muscle while you were working at the bar with this wooden stick, you know. It felt like if it was a nail going inside the muscle. But
well, you couldn't do that today, could you?
No.
Not allowed.
No. But she was explaining very well. She wasn't talking too much, but the few words that she was saying in class was very correct. Very correct, And so you started dancing in important role, or just as an aspirant, or just as a corps de ballet in the with PACT Ballet?
I was one of the first batch of aspirants. What happened was I arrived here in the August, September, and as I said, the company were away on tour. And so they had annual contracts, which started in January. So I worked with the company, I got paid, but I was told you can't have a contract until January, but we will employ you. So they were being fair, that's how it worked then. And as I say, I got everything that a company dancer would get. I got shoes and everything. that I needed. I just didn't have formal contract.
Yes.
So, but the following year, they started the aspirant program. And I personally thought for myself, it was the best thing, because you were allowed to go a little bit slower, in as much as to integrate into company life. You know, we all learned how to pirouette and to arabesque and to, you know, dance and execute roles.
Yes.
But company life, it's different. The etiquette, the behavior, what is expected of you. And I mean, Faith de Villiers never stopped telling us all, you are ambassadors of PACT Ballet.
Yeah.
And you realized what your role was. And they're all things that you learn by osmosis.
Yeah.
But you need to know.
Yes.
And happily, of course, the company wasn't very large at that point. So we were on stage. We never stopped dancing. We were not, you know, kept in the background or anything.
Yeah.
But I think it was a good way for me personally. Some people didn't like it. They didn't like the fact that they were an aspirant. They felt it was an insult. I didn't look at it that way at all. I actually was very, very glad that I had that time to integrate and without a lot of pressure. Though of course there was. We were in the corps de ballet. We danced, but it was just a gentler entry into a professional company.
Yes.
Yeah, especially if you're young.
Yes. Well, this is very necessary, because when you are younger, you have many difficulties to integrate yourself as a full corps de ballet, you know. So the aspirant is really useful in this case, the aspirant contract. And this is why I understand what you say very well, because it's very good. And so once you from aspirant, you became corps de ballet.
Corps de ballet, yes.
And you made an audition to do that, or did you
No,
just you were promoted?
No, I think they'd seen enough of me to be able to ascertain whether I would fit in or not.
And what were your difficult roles that you had to face? You know, sometimes you had some difficulties in some roles, in some variations, or following the others, and you had to work a little bit more to get on the same level of other people. Do you remember some difficulties, personal difficulties that you had while dancing or rehearsing?
I wouldn't call it difficulties. I think it's more a learning the way to work and learning how to learn the choreography. For me, repetition worked for me.
Yes.
And I would always be on the side of the studio when other things were going on, or, you know, in the rehearsal when you weren't actually needed. And I would practice whatever I needed to do, or I would take my own time during lunchtime, or we used to have an afternoon off in the week on a Thursday at one point, and I would stay behind.
Yes.
Because as I say, for me, repetition was what helped me.
Yes.
I think every role has its challenges, and as you go through, I mean, corps de ballet is not the poor relation of a ballet.
Yeah.
And in later years, as you know, I would get very, very cross if people implied that you were just in the corps de ballet.
Yes.
Because it takes a lot of dedication, and it takes a lot of work, and your mindset has to change. It's not just about the individual dancer, it's about all of you on that stage, be it 16, 18, however many of you in that corps de ballet.
Yes.
That was challenging too, and so it should be. If you find it easy, I'm afraid to tell you you're not doing it properly.
Yes.
Hmm.
And so when you were dancing after a few years with PACT Ballet, have you made some ballet tours with the company overseas?
Yes, we did in 1975. We went to Spain. We were invited. It was a festival of dance, and the companies came for 1 week each to the festival in Madrid, from all over the world. And and then we also then carried on to Barcelona for a week. But yes, it was a wonderful experience. It was it was a little bit nerve-wracking because it was during the time that Franco was ailing quickly, and the situation was, I don't want to exaggerate, but volatile. Nobody really knew how it was going to go if he passed away. And so there was an exit plan for the company by the South African embassy. But happily that was not necessary. So we were able to enjoy to the fullest being in another country with a very different audiences, very sophisticated audiences, and to experience that beautiful country and its culture. But we did, yes, that was the only overseas trip that we did. We toured extensively in South Africa.
And what ballet did you perform for that tour on Spain?
Okay, we took Andrei Bukowski's Vespri, which he had for his own company, New London company, and there was about 7 dancers. But what he did for PACT, and the first time he did this was for PACT Ballet, he extended it, which when you look at the ballet, was actually quite simple to do. It was one of those ballets that you could increase the numbers, decrease the numbers without compromising the choreography of the ballet. It was a very beautiful ballet, and the music was Vespri. And the costumes were absolutely exquisite. I loved it. Yes, and then we also did Graduation Ball, which is one of my favorite ballets, and if I may say so, one that I am well known. I did the Pigtails. I loved every minute. But like every ballet, it all looks easy, doesn't it, when you're sitting in the seat? But all of the choreography was very challenging. But the Pigtails solo was particularly, for me, it was particularly exhausting, if you like. That's the wrong word. That's too harsh a word. But halfway through, you suddenly stop, and it's a little light moment. But we know when you stop, you've got to get going again. And so that you had to get your mind ready for that moment to keep your adrenaline going. Adrenaline gives you energy. So it was challenging, but I absolutely loved that role. I really did. As many others.
And then when you returned back to South Africa, you continued to the same normal daily routine with the other ballet. And how many hours were you practicing and working in a day?
We did a normal day. It was 8 hours a day. And yes, of course, when we got back from our tour overseas, we got back to normal, where we had 2 seasons a year in Johannesburg and Pretoria. And then we toured the country. So we would go to bigger centers. And then we also did tours to smaller towns. And we would perform in town halls. We would perform in school halls. And for whatever reason, the town halls, they were very proud when we arrived and said, we've polished the floor of the stage today. And that was the last thing we needed, was a highly polished wooden floor. So that was pretty hair-raising. And the stage management at the time, of which one of them is now my husband, they used to put washing powder and Coca-Cola, spray it on the stage, much to the devastation of those who'd polished the stage prior to our arrival.
Yeah.
And but it stopped you slipping because we didn't have ballet mats those days. They did not exist.
Yes.
So, you know, other than falling down all the time, you had to do something, and but it played havoc with the shoes. It was
Yes.
tore them up a bit, but you know, you find a way. Invention, you know, necessity is the mother of invention, and
Yeah.
the stage crew definitely solved that problem for us.
Yeah,
When
they have to sort out the different ways to erase the problem.
Correct. But sorry, I digressed a bit there. We worked an 8-hour day with an hour's lunch. Started class at 10 o'clock. Of course, in the beginning, when I came to PACT, you had to be in the rehearsal all day, every day, in case you were needed.
Yes.
And as time went by, we had different artistic directors and different ballet mistresses, etc., whatever. And there was a better schedule. And I don't mean that disrespectfully for those who were there in the beginning.
Yeah.
But so you had your schedule, so you would come to your rehearsals when needed. When you saw 2 o'clock, we're going to do fairies or whatever, instead of sitting around until
Waiting.
rehearsal.
Yes.
Because then, if you knew that, you could go and find a space, if you wished, to go and rehearse something that was you thought you needed to practice, correct something, perfect something. So it was more productive, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, these things take time. And I mean, Denise Schultz and Louis Godfrey were masters at their scheduling.
Yes.
Absolutely. There was never a moment that I can think of where you sat around and you stared into space, not that one with the brain. If you were staring into space, you could be on the side doing something.
So
but
they knew what they were doing. The niche.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I need an hour for that. So those people are called for the hour, and I need to get through. And I learned that from them when I eventually became a ballet mistress. But whilst I was working with them as a repetiteur and then an assistant ballet mistress, I learned those things from them. Your time management was very important, but that evolves. You know, the company was very young and very new when I came. And so, you know, it was fine then, but we evolved,
Yes. And you dance also with many important dancers. I think you dance also with Edgardo, Hartley, or other important dancers like him in the ballet company when you were dancing Sleeping Beauty, the third act, second act, and I think you have such a rich background with other dancers that you have been, you know, participating as also as a soloist, I think.
Yes. Jean-Pierre, you know, I was a dancer for nearly 17 years, and my position by then was senior soloist. And I also started teaching and rehearsing things like Chickens from La Fille and Hours from Capalia. That's how I started when I was about 22. But I was very much forming my own career as well. So yes, over those, and I was with the company for 34 years. Excuse me. But of course, I've danced with many, many great dancers, and I'm very reluctant to name them in case I miss any out. You know how it goes. But you know, Dawn Weller, who created a marvelous career for herself. We are lifelong friends. We met, she'd been in the company 6 months longer than me. And we've seen each other build our careers. And we have a friendship of over years, well over 50 years. So that is someone who's been part of my life in the ballet company,
Yes.
part of who I am as a person.
Yes.
Yeah, Edgardo, brilliant. Jaime, Bruce Simpson, of course, Bruce Simpson. Our story is we danced together many, many times.
Yeah.
But unbeknown to us, well, as we know, Bruce is from Scotland. And I mentioned earlier that with the RAD, we had to go for retesting every year to see if we'd improved, and they would give us another scholarship.
Yes.
And the ballet school we went to was the ballet school he attended in Edinburgh, but he wasn't a scholar.
Hmm.
And we worked out when we met here in South Africa. Bruce had gone to, I think it was Wiesbaden or Düsseldorf, to a German company, then came to South Africa. And we were talking one day, and we gathered that we had actually for 4 years been in each other's presence once a year for a week, and we didn't know it. Because students at Marjorie Middleton School in Edinburgh had to help out with this week of the RAD scholarships. So they had to make sure that you knew where your dressing room was, where your next class was, where the canteen was, everything. They had to be on hand. And Bruce was one of them. But we didn't know that until we sat down one day and chatted when he came to the ballet company.
Wow.
Story. So
it's
he also
is
is a lifelong friend. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you started, how did it happen? Whether you were promoted senior ballet mistress?
Yes.
Did they choose you for your capacities? Did they talk to you? Did they ask you, do you want to teach? Or how did this happen?
It was really simple because as I was shy and inexperienced when I came to the company, I never forgot that. And so people were very kind to me and would help me on the side of the studio and were generous with their time. And as I progressed in the company and got more experience, when I noticed there might be a young dancer who was struggling in rehearsal, I might take them aside when we had a moment in the rehearsal, if we weren't needed, and go through whatever it was they were struggling with. Obviously, I'd ask them if they'd like me to, or I would offer to stay behind and help them a little bit for half an hour or so, if they wanted me to. And Denise and Louis, they noticed this. By now, I was nearly a soloist, and so I had been around for a bit, and they noticed. And Denise came up to me one day and she said, we were actually doing Sir Frederick Ashton's Midsummer Night's Dream, and we were doing the fairies. And when the principals were doing their pas de deux,
Yes.
I was on the side with a little one who very new, and it's very difficult, that ballet. It's very intricate, and musically it's difficult.
Yes.
And so I was helping, and she just came up to me and she said, do you like teaching? And I have to admit, I got a big fright. I thought she was implying that I give up dancing and start teaching. And I'm what? But that's how it started. And I said, I do. People help me, and I understand what it's like when you're new in the company. And, you know, as a ballet mistress, I used to say to the corps de ballet, to the new girls, I can't put a sticker on your forehead on opening night and say, please bear with me, I'm new. You have to look exactly like the girls who've been in the corps de ballet 10 years. And that is my job, to help you get there. And so I did understand that. So by someone helping you, you know, out of rehearsal and what have you, you know, it's to benefit for everyone. And so what they did was they gave me various things to do, as I say, chickens from Lovely Magadi, one of my most favorite ballets, and also hours from third act of Coppelia. And it grew from there. And they also taught me how to do a performance cast list, because they would say, we've done the cast list, now you put in the pages, you put in the court gents and ladies, you put in the extras, whatever.
Yeah.
So I learned how to do that, how to make sure it wasn't a double up, etc. Of course, there often was, but they taught me a lot, and they were very generous and kind with their knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah, and again, I digress. I mentioned graduation ball, and when Louis Godfrey came to the company as ballet master, I mean, I was starstruck beyond speech, because this man I had watched in festival ballet year after year after year when they traveled to Sunderland, where I was born and brought up, and to watch these ballets. And he was in this ballet and many others. And so, in a way, I knew the touring company's dancers long before I knew the resident company's dancers, like the Royal Ballet.
Yes.
And so, I mean, I was just absolutely blown away, never thinking one day we would have a close working relationship on the management. So for me, he was, you know, up there, and here I am working with this person. Yeah.
Yeah,
That generosity, you see, is important.
It's so beautiful to hear all this. It's very important, very important. Your career is so beautiful. Have you been, or did you ever meet or work with Cedric Ashton, Margot Fonteyn, those important great figures of ballet? Did they came over in South Africa or while you were in England?
Indeed, they came to South Africa. Margot Fonteyn came to do Sleeping Beauty, and by then I was a soloist, nearly a soloist. Sorry, I must correct myself. And yeah, I was doing things like fairies and the pas de trois, the Florestan. She was amazing. For me, personally, I think she was one of the most humble people and most humble dancers I have ever experienced, ever met. And you looked at this woman and you said, she doesn't need to throw her weight around. She doesn't need to be difficult. She doesn't need to be dramatic. You know, she was famous, but she was, it was a lesson, I think, for a lot of us. This is how you behave, not as we had experienced sometimes, but not always, others. Galina Samsova was another one, just like Dame Margot. But I have a personal story. Denise and Louis told me to learn Bluebird for the tour. We were going to go on tour with Sleeping Beauty after the main season. And to help me with stamina, it's a great one for always wanting stamina. And I was a soubrette dancer, very quick. And I always tried to make myself be even quicker. So to help me with stamina, I used to do the Bluebird in the wings after I'd done the Florestan. Yeah. And if I wasn't on stage in that performance in Florestan, I used to still hook up to the side stage. And one of the other chaps in the company was keen to learn. And we used to do it on the side. And then there was a bit of a crisis with an Aurora who she was supposed to do Bluebird. And the other cast of Aurora was doing her first Aurora. Actually, it was Dawn, for the matinee the next day. And the the Bluebird cast for the Friday got ill. And Denise and Louis said, no, you can't do Bluebird and then do your very first Aurora tomorrow. I mean, you can, Jean-Pierre, but they didn't want that. And they heard from De Margot's dresser that I'd been doing it every night in the wings. So they didn't know that. So I walked into the theatre thinking I was having an easy night because I was going to be a friend in Act 1 and a nymph in Act 2, and that was my job done. No, it wasn't. And they dragged out the tutu, and the wardrobe master was sometimes very naughty. He would tease you a lot. And he said, try this on. And I didn't dare say no with the tutu. I didn't dare say no because I thought it was something. And eventually I said to him, David, I think you need to stop now. It's gone far enough. He said, no, Nikki, I'm serious. Louis is on his way and Denise is on their way. We need to know if you fit into the costume. And that was my way of knowing that I had to do Bluebird that night.
Oh my gosh.
I pooped myself stupid. But anyway, I had a wonderful partner, Milan Hatala, marvelous partner. He was so kind and so caring and just wonderful. But part of my story is, and sorry, I'm talking a lot about myself, but De Margot, at the end of the performance, she stopped me at the end of the curtain calls. Can you believe? And she said, you did very, very well. And I thought, this woman, this dancer, took the time to watch me. And yet she, after Red Riding Hood and the Wolf, was going to be doing her Grand Pas de Deux. And yet she took time to watch me, and she took time to say something. And I've never forgotten it, just that humility. But then her dresser said, she's incredibly nosy. She wants to know everything about everybody in the country. And she then learned that Barry and I were engaged and we were going to be married at the end of the season. And the last night she gave a dinner for the whole company at the restaurant at the Civic Theatre. And she came up to us and said, I believe you're getting married. Congratulations, etc. But that was one. I've concentrated on De Margot. But Sir Frederick Ashton did come to South Africa, and Sir Robert Helpman, to do The Ugly Sisters. It was a celebration of the 10th anniversary of the Civic Theatre, the building in Johannesburg. And they came to celebrate that. And we didn't see too much of them because we weren't involved in their rehearsals, not that they needed any, but we tried our hardest to peek through windows of the rehearsal room and just drink in everything. You know, those glass doors at Queen's Hall. And he is just the most gentle person, Sir Fred. But of course, brilliant with his choreography and what have you is just incredible. And Sir Robert Helpman was gregarious, is how I would describe him. But it was an honor to be on stage with these giants in the balletic world. Yeah. But there are many others, Jean-Pierre. Would take 3 months to go through them all.
So you have been teaching with PACT Ballet for how many years? Until the last era of PACT Ballet, 1992, or you stopped before?
Well, we did. PACT Ballet changed to State Theatre Ballet. Didn't stop. With the name change because we'd moved to the State Theatre, and they felt, the directorate felt it was better to call us State Theatre Ballet because we were connected to the State Theatre. But we were always PACT Ballet. Didn't stop, but didn't change.
Yes.
Just the name, you know. Well, I was there for 34 years and teaching from 1970s, early 1970s, 71. Yeah.
That's
And of
quite
course,
a long time.
yes, and it was a progression too. Then I reached a stage where I realized that I had to make a decision that I wanted to concentrate 100%
Yes.
on teaching, on being ballet mistress, and also realizing that my time as a dancer, I could have gone on for another couple of years, but I also wanted to have a baby.
Yes.
So it all sort of, worked out. But also I found it very difficult towards the end because I was rehearsing a lot. The company, we had changed artistic directors, and so ballet masters, ballet mistresses really took the most of the workload, if I may say. And I found that I was rehearsing ballets I was also dancing in. One of them, funnily enough, being Graduation Ball.
Yes.
And my ballet partner in that ballet, Michael Richter, he used to rehearse me during my lunch hours with said solo and the whole thing. Because I'm at the front now, no one else was rehearsing the company.
Yes.
And I thought, no, I've built up my career and I've done wonderful roles. And I know I had a good reputation. I don't want to go out people thinking, oh, she should stop now.
Yes.
I didn't want that. So I realized that doing both was exceptionally challenging. And so I made that decision to stop dancing and to concentrate on being ballet mistress.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you had you worked with Denise Schulz also. Then
Yes.
after Denise Schulz, you had Lorna Haupt.
Lorna Haupt, I think, I can't remember the time frame, Jean-Pierre, 18 months maybe, I don't know. I know that Dawn came in the middle of Lorna's notice period. I'm not quite sure what happened.
Yes.
I think maybe it was a mutual agreement.
Yes.
Because you can't have, as they say here in Africa, you can't have two bulls in a crowd.
Yes.
You can't have two artistic directors.
Yes.
Trying to, one's coming in, the other's going out. So I can't remember, and I don't know why I can't remember how long. But then after that, it was Dawn until we finished in 2000 when we were retrenched, when the company, the State Theatre was closed.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have just kept going.
You had a wonderful approach and collaboration with Denise Schulz and also with Dawn Weller, because she was a ballet dancer, principal ballerina, and also she became artistic director.
Yes.
How was your relationship with Lorna Haupt for the few months that she was director? Did you have the same impact as the other one, or was it different?
It was very different. It was very, very different because remember with Denise and Louis, I grew up in their care as a dancer.
Yeah.
And remember with Dawn, I also grew up from 17 as a friend, as a colleague, and so on and so forth. So the relationships were
different.
Incredibly different.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely different.
Yeah. And how was your relationship with the main choreographer, Ashley Killer? Did you have a good relationship, working relationship with, I mean, he was the choreographer, you were the repetitor, you were working, I remember that you both were working together on a new ballet production, you were in the same ballet studio, and you were giving the best of yourselves. You as a repetitor, the Ashley Killer as a choreographer. It was like a big team that you were fabricating in the ballet company. And how was your relationship with Ashley Killer in the company?
Well, Ashley started as ballet master while we were still at Queen's Hall.
Yes.
And then of course he choreographed ballets, and his ballets were beautiful.
Yes.
I mean, so every choreographer, I think, has a ballet that maybe doesn't quite work. I mean, I've worked with Ronnie Hind, whom I adore. I think he's just got the most brilliant mind as a choreographer. Andrei Pukowski, Ashley, some of Ashley's ballets were very different, but absolutely mind-blowing. So also I would rehearse for him sometimes, because he would say, it's my choreography, I can't see.
Yes.
Whereas for whatever reason, because my forte was rehearsing for the ballet, my main thrust, you get used to seeing things that maybe not in sync.
Yes.
But as people, Ashley and I were extremely fond of each other. We supported each other in difficult times.
Yes.
We were friends. We were colleagues. We respected each other. No, it was good. It was really good.
If you would have the chance to start all over again, would you like to do it?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt, my journey was more than I could have expected, more than I could have dreamed of. I mean, I had 2 wonderful careers in the ballet company. As a dancer and attaining senior soloist, but I also did principal roles that suited me, for which I was very happy. Coppelia, and my one challenge, and I'm glad I was given the opportunity, was to do Titania in Midsummer Night's Dream, and I danced with Bruce because it was completely opposite to my natural ethos. I was a soubrette,
Yeah.
and I had to work this one out, because Titania is not, Midsummer Night's Dream is not soubrette at all. And I worked very, very hard alone. I recognized, because I was mature enough to, that I couldn't attack this role the same way I had many others.
Yeah.
I had to really dig deep, and it was good for me. And I used to work long hours after everyone had gone home on tiny things. And I used to work in the afternoon, the company had off, until one day Bruce Simpson came charging in through those huge glass doors on the Thursday afternoon, and he said, "You are going to stop, and you are coming with me, and we are going to have coffee." And I got a stern talking to, because he said, "You're working too hard on this. You have to have confidence. You have to believe in yourself. I believe in you. It's too much. You're getting obsessive." And he said, "I'm going to come to the next rehearsal. We will work together, but I'm going to sit and I'm going to watch you. And I'm going to tell you if you need to carry on like this." And it was wonderful.
It was wonderful.
You know, he was like my brother. He's like my brother.
Yeah.
And so we did that. And I was very proud of realizing that I had another string to my bow. I had another aspect of my dancing ability. And one of the nicest things was Louis came to me after the performance, and he said, "Well, you know, I wasn't sure if you could really do it. But," he said, "today you proved to me that you can. You have another dimension to your dancing." Well, that was just like gold.
Wow.
So to have those kind of things, accolades, and obviously there are times when you don't do a role as best you feel you could have, or a performance mostly. We all have that. We all come off stage and wish, you know, that you could just slide into a hole in the floor because the pirouette didn't come off, or the lift wasn't good, or whatever. We've all had those days. And unfortunately, we only remember those things. We don't. I used to say to dancers afterwards, please, you know, a fouette is only one step in 3 acts, and you think you failed? Of course you haven't. But we're all the same as dancers. We beat ourselves up when we don't think we're perfect.
Yeah.
But no, I wouldn't change a thing. I think I've been very, very blessed. Very, very blessed.
It's
And
beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And as a ballet mistress, I think all ballet mistresses are known as being tough. All of us were terrified of our ballet mistresses. I was terrified of Faith de Villiers. I mean, she's a darling. I was terrified of Denise Schultz. I mean, what a wonderful woman. You understand what I'm saying? It's not the person, it's just the title.
Yes.
But I remember being terrified the first performances that I did professionally.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrified. I didn't enjoy one of them. And I was in a courtier in Cinderella, dancing, you know, debutantes and what have you. Really one of the crowd. And I messed up. Oh my gosh, I messed up. I was so terrified I could hardly move. And then as I progressed through my career, I found ways of making my nerves work for me.
Yes.
And it was advice that was given to me by Anne Howard, who came from the Royal Ballet to help with her husband, Jack Hart, to mount various ballets. And she said, your nerves is your adrenaline, make it work for you, not against you. And I learned a big lesson, you know, that way. But the one thing that I made up my mind to do was I never wanted a dancer, a young dancer in the court of ballet, to ever feel so terrified that they couldn't function when they got on stage. So I made sure that in rehearsals, they knew exactly what they needed to do. So whether it was because you had to be very, very strict, I often used to take a dancer, they weren't hearing the music. So you can't arrive on the same note of the music together if you're not all hearing it the same.
Yes.
So I would take them aside maybe a few minutes, finish the rehearsal 10 minutes early and take them aside and go through it and see what it was that they were needing to hear, understand, or if it was a step or whatever, just taking that time, because I never wanted anyone who had me as their ballet mistress, and my responsibility was to get a quality product on stage, to be so terrified of what you needed to do that you didn't enjoy the experience and the beauty of what you were doing. And I say this with tongue in cheek, but I think I failed only in my entire teaching twice, only twice. And one little girl, she was the front lady in Bayadere, and at one point everyone faces one way to the opposite prompt, and you start the adage, and poor child, she was young, but poor child, she just had a wobbly, and she started the adage 2 counts before she should have. And I'm sitting in the audience, the matinee, and going, how is she going to fix this? I can't fix it. I'm sitting here in the auditorium. How? And there was just this hissing sound, and it was the girl behind her telling her to stop and saying, retire, développer, extend, close. I heard later, but I just heard, I won't say the girl's name, but I just heard, and there was this shame. It was, but the nerves just took over, absolutely.
I know.
And I think she did a couple of performances after that, and then she left the company, bless her. Oh. And another lass, she was very, very talented, beautiful dancer. Opening nights in the corps somewhere, be it a big piece, a small piece, she would do something different, usually starting again, counts before she should have. And she just seemed to have a blowout when she was in the Porta Ballet, and she was a really, really good dancer. She did solo roles and what have you. It was just a mental block. And
Yeah.
eventually I made sure that, again, she was short, so in the front. So I
Yeah.
used to make sure that she wasn't in the front.
Yes.
So that pressure was off.
Yes.
But as I say, there's no detriment to them. It's how a person is made, you know.
Yes.
They just can't. But there's only two in all of those years.
Well, but also you must consider that in all these years that you have been working as a ballet mistress, many dancers have improved and they enjoyed your work, working with you in your classes, in your rehearsals, in the ballet production. I mean, you were a great support for them also. So you must consider also this, you know, the positive thing that you have been doing on ballet dancers.
Thank you. Yes, Jean-Pierre, you know what, it comes to maturity. I mean, I sometimes in a few years I've met dancers who are now adults and have schools or whatever, and they go, "Oh, Nikki, I met one in a restaurant about 4 or 5 years ago. I thought you hated me." Oh my Lord. Why? No, I realized you didn't, but I thought you did then. Simply because, and I'd say I can answer that, I didn't let you get away with anything. You had to do it the way you needed to do it.
Yes.
So if it was nagging, so be it. Yes, I realize that now.
Yes.
You know, look, it's a bit daunting when someone says that to you, because you're not there to hate people, you're there to help.
I remember that when I first joined PACT Ballet and you were teaching, so my English at that time wasn't very good. I was working at the bar and you came to explain something to me in English. You saw that I was staring at you with big eyes and I wasn't moving my face. So you started explaining in French, hoping that I could get something in my brain to follow the other people.
I remember you burst out laughing, and I turned away because I was terrible. What I said, I mean, it was pretty. And I turned away and I thought to myself, why did you even try? You just made an idiot of yourself. I do remember, Jean-Pierre.
But I remember the way you said in French that I started laughing a little bit, and then you started laughing also, because we couldn't stop laughing both.
I mean, really, the only French I know is ballet French, which got us out of a jam in Paris once, but still, it's nothing.
Nikki, Nicola, now that you have been experiencing all this beautiful part of ballet, and that you see the ballet of today, what is your wish that you would say to the dancers of today, with all the experience that you have as a ballet mistress? What is your wish? I mean, you see that there are positive things in ballet today, the technique has improved, maybe some other things don't work, matches very well like the old good times, but what is your wish to the dancers of today?
You're talking internationally?
Yes.
I agree with you. A technique has improved immensely, and because it's, I think, more, I'm not an expert in this, but I think it's more scientifically sort of approached. You've got body conditioning, you've got various preparations for the body, which is not dance, but it's preparing the body for dance, which we never had. We had to work it out for ourselves. So I think the training, that's the word I'm looking for, the training has become much more intense. It's become, I think, what's the word I'm looking for? And not French, please. Holistic.
Yeah.
It's become more holistic.
Yeah.
And I think it's incredible what dancers do today.
Yeah.
Is incredible. We were good, and we got better,
Yeah.
and we progressed. I mean, our era,
Yeah.
not just me and
Yes.
whatever. But the whole approach is holistic. Your body is prepared better. Because you have biokineticists now.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't exist in our day.
Yeah.
Body conditioning didn't exist in our day. Gyms didn't exist. A gym was for boxers and wrestlers. Can
Yeah.
you imagine? You know, so it was not, didn't exist. And so the progression and seeing countries who produce incredible dancers, but you have to have incredible teachers.
Yes.
And you have to have incredible teachers who are prepared to learn and research. And you see that all the time. You
Yeah.
can't just walk it. I'm talking not even about companies, but training dancers. You can't just walk into a studio and just knock off a few exercises at the bar and what have you. It's got to be thought through.
Yeah.
It has to be. Well, it was in our day as well, but you know, you're leading up to whatever. I know that with Papillon there was a lot of petty battery, a
Yeah.
huge amount, and we had to, our classes had to encompass a large amount of petty battery to prepare the dancer for what they needed to do in the rehearsals. So you can't be willy-nilly. There are institutions, there are dancing schools, ballet schools, dance, because we talk about dance, that are, you know, they just slide along and do what they've always done. But then there are others who research,
Yeah.
and it's all thought through, and therefore you get a better trained dancer, especially for the profession. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, yes, beautifully, beautiful reply. Wonderful.
If I could just say, when I mentioned earlier when I was at the Royal Ballet School and I met South African dancers, well, not just South African, and funny enough, it was all Southern Hemisphere dancers who I made friends with. I don't know whether it was preparing me for my future life, but it was a culture shock for me as well, because they were older. A lot of them were 18. So they had 3 years on me, definitely. But obviously their training was very different. I saw things at the Royal Ballet School. I'd never seen anyone do steps like that before. And it was a wake-up call to say, well, you better learn. You better listen, you better work, and you better learn, because that is what is your competition when you want to get into a company.
Yeah.
But having said that, New Zealand and Australia, they sent goodish dancers. I'm talking about Royal Ballet School now, where I was. And now, and for many years, the caliber of dancers from those countries, particularly Australia, I hope I'm not offending anybody, but that, and it comes from the training. It has to. I mean, they are amazing. The Korean dancers, unbelievable. And I'm sure I've left out many, many others, and I don't mean to. They're just the two that come to mind. So the progression of training from an early age right through and while you're in the company has risen to an incredible level.
Yes. Well, it's a very, I like what you have replied so far, because all your replies, all your interview is beautifully said, beautifully explained all throughout, and it gives the most beautiful approach and picture of the world of ballet, plus your great experience that you had in the past.
Oh, thank you. You're very kind.
I'm not doing compliments, I'm saying the truth. So John,
No, I've still got to go wash the dishes.
so just a little question. You have always been working with the RAD, the Royal Academy, no? You have been studying Czechoslovak method. What do you think about the Vaganova, the Russian system of today? When we see YouTube videos about the Mariinsky Theater, about the Bolshoi, what do you, as a professional ballet mistress, what is your opinion about their teaching?
Oh, well, you obviously, Vaganova, Bolshoi was way, way beyond our time as young dancers learning to dance.
Yeah.
And it sounds like I'm not answering your question, but I will. I think the training, everything changed when Nureyev jumped that barrier in Paris.
Yeah.
The world saw how male dancers can dance. Prior to that, it was getting better and it was progressing in the West, but nothing like what they were seeing, this dancer particularly being able to execute. And so things started to change from there. Even Dame Margot Fontaine. I mean, people were talking when I went to the Royal Ballet School in '64, people were talking about, oh, she must stop, she must stop. There were students who were full of themselves, some of them. So they thought they had an opinion, which they didn't. But, oh, she must stop, it's time she stops. And then he came on the scene, and then we were privileged to go to the final dress rehearsals of productions from the Royal Ballet School students. And that was 9:30 on a Monday morning. And we went to Romeo and Juliet. And it was the first time I'd seen Dame Margot Fontaine dance. And I couldn't believe it. She was like a 13, 14-year-old girl. Amazing, absolutely amazing. And I was going, what are they talking about? What were they talking about? They were talking about the fact that she didn't do 32 fouettes in Swan Lake. Well, so she must stop. But I have to say, those around me who had been saying what they were saying did concede that it was just incredible. That was Nureyev. That was him, because he was her partner. He was her Romeo. Yeah. And so it took off. And then people started to sit up and say, we need to find out more. But again, I'm going back to my days at the Royal Ballet School. We had a wonderful teacher, look her up, Joan Lawson. And she was different. She was wonderful. She was different and a little bit imposing because we'd never seen anyone like that. She wanted to demonstrate about the shoulder blades coming down into your waist, not pulling your shoulder blades back, pulling them down into your waist. So she just took her dress off. So we could see. Thankfully, she had a petticoat on, but but this woman, she said, and I have no reason to disbelieve it, that she had been allowed to go and observe at the Vaganova school, and no Western teacher had ever been allowed up until that point into certain classes. And she, for some reason, they allowed her in. Well, they obviously knew her reputation. And there were certain things that she observed. She said she stopped asking questions. Why do they do that like that? Why don't they do that like that? Because she said she felt she was getting the wrong answer. They didn't want her to know. So she fathomed it out for herself. And a lot of things that I learned from her, I implemented for myself and when I was teaching in the company. And not a huge amount, tiny things. But what she was saying to us is that their methods were, again, I'll use the word scientifically thought out. There was no rush. As we all know, they don't leave the bar for a year. They don't do more as children. They don't do more than so many exercises in that year. And Makarova herself verified this when she came to dance for us, with us. But Joan Lawson was saying they don't want anyone to get in. So when the world opened up and they did have summer schools, etc., you got teachers who came away who thought they were well versed in Vaganova method, or they got hold of the curriculum, the syllabus.
Mm.
So now you've got people, and again, I'm probably going to offend people, who think they are now masters of Vaganova, and I find that dangerous.
Mm.
I agree. Little knowledge is dangerous. So you get people saying, we have someone here, I've devised my own syllabus for this school, and it's Vaganova, but it's my Vaganova. You work that one out. I mean, so every method has its merits. And of course, I think none of them are alien. It's the approach. I mean, someone said, oh, RAD is better than Cicchetti. Well, I'm RAD, and they were talking to me about Cicchetti, and I said, no, it's not. It's just a method. It's a syllabus that you follow to progress through to become a dancer or whatever, or learn dancing, become proficient. It's not better, alien, harder, different. A tondu is a tondu. Might have a different inflection on the way you say tondu, but it's not alien. I mean, a tondu is a tondu. It doesn't matter which method you're using.
It's the concept. It's the concept of the movement. Is not the
correct.
method. Yes.
Correct. And so I think Vaganova method is fabulous, absolutely. But you better know what you're doing.
Yes.
Because if you don't, you're going to wreck bodies.
Yes.
That's what you're going to do.
Yes.
People now are becoming more responsible. And I know someone who's still teaching. I'm not in this country. And she encompasses some of the method, if you like, because it marries with everything else.
Yes.
But it just makes more sense.
Yes.
Or not even more sense, makes sense.
Yes. Yes.
So, and that's intelligent.
Yes.
You're using all of that knowledge intelligently. But it's when you go out there and you try and impress people and you try to seduce parents into thinking their child is going to get a better grounding because you've used the word Vaganova.
Yes.
But you need to be responsible. If you're not trained in Vaganova, you had better make sure what you're doing is right.
I agree.
I go on all day about it, sorry.
No, I totally agree with what you said because it's fully correct. Two last questions and we're done up. I have been too long asking questions. So the first
it's fine. I love it.
The first question, so you left PACT Ballet, the State Theatre, and then Dawn Weller, as artistic director, she left South Africa and she started working in Australia.
Correct.
In Perth, because she was directing the Ballet Academy in Perth, I think.
I'm going to correct you. She and her husband went to Brisbane first.
Brisbane? Oh, okay.
Brisbane, because he is a doctor of geology.
Okay.
And he had been offered a job in Australia.
Okay.
And they went there first, and they were going to stay there. And he happened to be somewhere, and he read an advert for the Perth Artistic Directorship of Perth Modern.
Oh.
And so she flew across and she got the job there. So that's how they ended up in Perth, thank God. Job she did, amazing.
So have you ever worked with Dawn Weller in Australia?
Yes, I have.
You,
I have.
you have been teaching there?
Yes. What happened was I made a decision not to open a ballet school in South Africa, in Joburg. I had only taught professionals. I had taught children in our school. But I just felt with the ballet company closing, at that point, where is the vehicle for children to learn ballet and go forward? And I thought about it long and hard, and I thought there are enough ballet schools around. I don't think they need mine. So I enrolled at the Montessori College to learn early child development, 3 to 6 Montessori method preschool, which I loved. So crazily, at the end of that year, Dawn asked me to go and help her with rehearsing La Sylphie. So she had taught it and what have you, and she wanted me just to go and to help her and to put in my input, which I appreciated. She still valued what I had to offer. So the day after my 5-hour exam, I got on a plane to Perth.
It's a long
Don't forget, I was 54 when I went to college. So I had 20-year-olds in my class, and then 3 of us were over 40. So it was very challenging. And anyway, and I went and I did that. I worked with her, and beautiful production, and it was in a quarry, absolutely perfect setting. You can look it up. These days you just look things up, don't you? And yeah, we worked together, and it was lovely, and I'm glad we did it. Yes, but I haven't been back to teach again. We've been back twice, one for a wedding, one for a birthday, but not to teach. But it was lovely. Nice to be together again.
Well, it's always nice to catch up with, you know, old friends and old colleagues.
Yes.
I remember.
And these days we are old.
I remember the days that you came with Barry to visit Rome. And
I beg your pardon, I didn't catch that.
I remember the days that you and Barry came to visit Rome.
Oh.
And we had a wonderful time. You remember the days that you went up to the cupola of the Vatican?
Yes, yes. And you were very, very caring and very kind. And we had a wonderful time being with you, Jean-Pierre. It was so special. And yes, you were just amazing.
I remember that when we climbed up the stairs, there was about 300 and more stairs to climb. And I was telling you, now you sit, you breathe, you relax, and then we keep going upstairs. And we did that several times. Then when we finally reached the top of the cupola, there were 3 monks. And I told you, Nicola, you see, you are so lucky, you are so blessed, because if something happened to you now and you die, the 3 monks will give you the blessing. And you are at the Vatican, you have the most beautiful place, you go to paradise straight away.
However, they were so young, I think they were just learned monks. I don't know how far I would have got. But I do remember coming down, and then there's a lift part of the way, right? There's a lift part of the way.
Yes, because we took the elevator.
The elevator, yes. Part of the way. I really thought it was to the top when we started off.
Yes.
But anyway, and so we came down, and when the doors opened, we were in St. Peter's.
Yes.
In the church. And you went, I didn't know the lift came here.
No, I didn't know.
But you live here.
It was a surprise. It was a surprise also for me.
Yes. It was a truly wonderful trip. And we were talking the other day, because where we live now, and we're in a retirement village, and we're on the south coast of Natal. And if I may say so, there aren't many good restaurants around, simply because COVID, they did just have to close.
Yes.
And Barry and I were saying the other day, I'd love a good steak, a really good steak. And we both said, you remember when we went with Jean-Pierre to that beautiful restaurant that we insisted you took us to again when we came back from our tour, and you had entrecôte.
Yes.
And it was beautiful. And we were like, where are we going to find a steak like that in Scotland? I don't know.
It was very tasty, that entrecôte. It was very nice.
It was.
It was.
But it was a very special time spent with you. And we treasure it, Jean-Pierre, because never mind your consideration and kindness, but just where you took us and what you showed us. And we both said when we came back and we had half a day, unfortunately, we had to go in the high season, so it was crowded, and we went to the Sistine Chapel, and Barry came out and he said, I'm so disappointed because it was just conveyor belt.
Yeah.
And we both also said about St. Peter's, thank God we came with you the first time, because that would have been our entire experience, the second one of the tour, which was nothing. It was dreadful. And we went, thank God, we went in a quiet time with you, and it was just amazing. And we talk about it a lot.
Yes.
We really do.
Well, for me, it was a must that I had to give you, because with all the teaching that you have been giving to me when I was working with PACT Ballet, you gave me a big mountain of experience. And in exchange, what I have been giving to you while you were visiting Rome, mine was little like that. So if I could do more, I would do it with all my heart.
Jean-Pierre, we say we would like to travel more, and we did say we would like to go back to Rome and to Venice, because you know Barry was so ill in Venice.
Yes, I remember.
He never saw it. He was in the hotel. He could, he saw a tiny bit at Mark Square in the evening, but he never saw.
Yes.
And we want to go back, but we're getting on in age. I don't know how we're going to get there, but yeah.
Me too. I'm getting old now.
But it's lovely to spend time with you.
Nicola, one last thing, and then we end up.
Yes.
What is your message that you wish to say with all your heart to the people who are watching this video internationally and who are members of Ballet International, as you are, and that could support the art of ballet, could help dancers, and to improve and to not lose the art of ballet? Because our modern time, we don't know how secure it is. The culture of ballet may die one day, maybe. We don't know, with all the different events that we have in the world, wars, epidemic, and things like that. So how could people support to keep alive the performing arts? And so make your last wish to the people who could help, and maybe they don't want to help.
Jean-Pierre, it is quite an incredible question, because for the reasons you have stated, closures of ballet companies, wars, etc., all of those things. And I think ballet in itself, we're talking about ballet now, art brings joy. It feeds the soul. Music feeds the soul. So wherever and however you can, do the best you can. Even if it's a small amount. Just a few people together doing a class to music, be it from a CD. It doesn't matter. to bring that in, to feed the soul. And this is what we miss the most now, that we're not involved in it, is that involvement. That each day you're listening to beautiful music, etc., etc. So no matter what it is, no matter how small it is, just do the best you can when you can, but always be true to the art form. Don't water it down. Try and give the best. It might not be what you know, because all of us have known the best, but I can't think of anywhere particularly, well, I can, but I'm talking about worldwide, where no one is struggling to keep this art form alive and healthy. And the only way it can be healthy is if whoever is teaching, whoever is running a company, whoever is trying to get something going, be true to yourself and be true to the art form. Be honest. And somewhere along the line, it will improve and it will grow.
Yes. This is the most beautiful, I think, beautiful interview that we have today. It's
Thank you.
so rich of contents and artistic content, and I think that many people will love to listen to your interview, and will have a lot of success, your interview on the net. A little question, do you give me the permission to upload this interview on YouTube and on Facebook on your behalf?
Absolutely, absolutely. I trust
Okay.
your judgment, and if there's anything you think is not right, you do what you need to do. I hope I haven't spoken only about myself too much.
No, no.
But I have enjoyed it. You know, no one knows, like Barry and I, like we don't know other people. No one knows a person's DNA, if you like.
Yes.
And dance and theatre, as you know, Barry was the technician. It's in our DNA, and sometimes we miss it terribly.
Yes.
And unfortunately, in South Africa at the moment, there's not a lot of, it's going to improve, but not a lot of quality entertainment, opera, plays, dance, whatever. And so we find it a little hard at the moment because there's nothing to feed our soul except our music.
Yes.
But Jean-Pierre, just one thing, just for you. Well,
Yes.
you can put it in if you want to, but a little thing. You asked me about dance as an influence, and I mentioned Rudolf Nureyev the other day. And as students, we were very in awe because the Royal Ballet Company rehearsed in the same premises as the school.
Yes.
So you walked the same corridor, you came in the same entrance, okay, the students and the company alike. And they would also be in, they would go to the canteen, but we were instructed when the company came down for their break, you stepped aside from the counter, you stood against the wall and you waited until they'd all been served. And that was what you did.
Is that,
However,
are you
referring
when you were in Royal Ballet or in South Africa?
Royal Ballet School, the Royal Ballet School.
Okay.
Yeah, in London. And so we would see Dame Margot beautifully dressed, as you see in her photos, they're all true, walking down the corridor. Antoinette Sibley, Svetlana Beryosova, everyone who's in the Royal Ballet at the time, Merle Park. I've only mentioned, I don't know why I've only mentioned women, but never mind. All normal people. They just walked down the corridor. They were going to the dressing rooms to change and do class or whatever. There was one person, and you looked, and it was a hat down here, cap, and a brown leather coat, and a scarf, and a leather bag. Trying to, but he wasn't really, trying to camouflage himself. That was Rudolf Nureyev. And we all then learned, you are meant to notice him because he's trying to look like he doesn't want to be recognized. But he was the only dancer in the company that was like that.
So,
It was a thrill to walk past this person.
well,
Yeah.
he was a great artist. He was a great artist, a great person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And revolutionized the male technique, the male, what's the word you can help me with? The expectation of the male dancer from then on. So you weren't just a partner who could sort it out.
Thanks to him, thanks to Rudolf Nureyev at the Opera House of Paris, the ballet company of Paris, there have been a tremendous amount of new dancers who learned and improved the technique thanks to Nureyev.
Correct.
She has been working.
Well, the West's eyes were opened, were they not?
Yes.
Yeah. But Rudy coming along the corridor, the scarf, hat, and everybody used to giggle once you got over.
It was he became a figure of ballet, you know, you could recognize him with the hat.
Also, the coat and everything's in the pictures.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Nicola Middlemist, just to refresh my memory, because you know that I'm also getting old. So as a title, I cite, because I don't remember where I put my pen and my paper, Nicola Middlemist, ex senior ballet mistress.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I will put that.
That was my last title.
Okay.
And senior soloist, yeah.
Senior soloist, okay.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I don't remember anything now.
I'll tell you what, I'll send it to you.
Okay,
I'll send it to you on WhatsApp.
Okay, send me the correct title, because I don't want to, you know, to forget the wrong things.
It's just that people know you as your professional name.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yes.
I, like on my Facebook, I put both, because some people know me as Nikki Snow and some people know me as Nikki Middlemist.
Okay.
So yeah, so I just
now,
put it together.
Okay, now we finish the interview, and you send me the text on WhatsApp.
Yes, I'll do that.
I prepare the video and I put it on YouTube.
Good, lovely.
Okay.
Thank you. It is lovely talking to you.
Many kisses to everyone from me. Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Have a good day further. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.